Right, thank you so much for joining us once again. We're going to continue on into our first panel discussion of the day, which will be led by our moderator, Mr. Andile Nzebele. Please give him a round of applause.
Morning, everyone. Yes, we are the first panel for today. I think I would prefer to sit down as well with the panel. But before I do so, I would just maybe like to ask the panel members to introduce themselves, just briefly before we kick off with the panel discussion. I would like to start with Mr. Schult. If you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay, morning everyone. My name is Gauri McLachlan. I'm a technical specialist from SMEC South Africa. I've been there for about 13 years, specializing in transport engineering. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, morning everybody. My name is Donovan Schult. I'm the head of digital and technology for MPAMOT Africa. Previously with Mott McDonald for about 15 years. Excited to be here. Love all things digital. So, and we also asked the moderator not to throw us any curveballs today.
Morning everyone. I'm Anien Nauta, currently a BIM manager working at AECOM. I come from an architectural background. I am actually a professional architect, worked in industry for a few years before I did a bit of a pivot into the BIM space. Really enjoy what I'm doing and happy to be here.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bridget Ssamula. I'm the CEO for Engineering Council of South Africa. I am also previously in consulting, though I don't think, but previously AECOM. But I am in charge of right now regulating the profession, and I'm on the receiving end of what digitization can do for an organization. Thanks.
Thanks, colleagues. Really appreciate that. Okay, I will just maybe set the scene so that we give a context in terms of how we're gonna proceed with our discussion. So South Africa's built environment is steadily embracing digital transformation, yet significant barriers continue to impede progress. Legal ambiguity, fragmented standards, weak data governance, and inconsistent use of common data environments undermine trust and efficiency. Human resistance to change, skills shortages, and rigid contract models limit collaboration, while poorly defined information requirements and misaligned handovers erode life cycle value. Added to this bandwidth limitations, legacy systems constraints, and the high cost of digital tools and training. In this discussion, the panel will share their insights, perspectives, and practical experiences from the field, exploring how the sector can navigate these challenges and unlock a more integrated, resilient, and future-ready digital ecosystem for South Africa's built environment. The practitioners will further unpack critical issues shaping digital collaboration, information exchange, and data management, examining how these can be strengthened to promote transparency, efficiency, and trust across the entire project life cycle. So that's a broad context. I will then begin with Dr. Bridget to basically help us to unpack from an ECSA perspective what her take is. So, Dr. Bridget, as digital collaboration platforms become the default in engineering design, project management, and asset lifecycle management, how is ECSA defining professional accountability in the context of data accuracy, given that models such as BIM, digital twins, are co-created by multidisciplinary teams, often across borders. Where does the line of professional responsibility lie when inaccurate data or faulty design inputs lead to project failure? Should ECSA consider regulatory guidance on digital sign-offs or authenticated data responsibility seals akin to the engineer's signature?
Thank you very much. And by the way, it's no longer the engineer's signature, it's the engineer's QR code. So thank you very much. So I think firstly, because we do look at the life cycle, both from university to practice, there are a couple of universities that have incorporated digital design. There are a couple of universities that have incorporated it as part of the design phase of a student's process. But there are some very specific degrees that are being developed or universities are pivoting towards to be able to attract that type of engineering practitioner. Now, it is interesting to note that part of our battle at ECSA is to convince computer engineers, software engineers, that they're actually engineers who need to register. And it is actually a global issue because they do feel that what they do, even though it follows all of the fundamental aspects of design, but because they can do it maybe without minimum supervision because they are the creators and the co-creators, they do not need that level of oversight and supervision. So there is an aspect of the industry that we need to work with, and we are working around the computer and software engineering models to make sure that we get the right number of people registered and also engaging with the right employers. However, as the digitization merges into design in a very real way, whether it is design, project delivery, the fundamentals of the teams don't change, meaning the design engineer is the one who also, it's just that now he'll have a much larger team that gets to do the value engineering and the constructability reviews as part of the delivery options of the design for the client. But the responsibility doesn't change for the person that is responsible for delivering the design and signing off the design. So what we are doing is that when we receive those very specific applications, and we encourage particularly younger people that are merging, whether it's civil, water, or you were an electrical but you ended up in the digital design space, we're encouraging you to disclose that up front. Many of them are bringing forward a lot of their designs as the project to be evaluated at registration. And what we are also doing is that we are making sure that the panel of reviewers have knowledge of BIM, Civil 3D, so that they can be able to understand and evaluate them well. But the responsibility doesn't change. The requirement for registration doesn't change. So as we have opened ourselves up to whether it is research, academia, digital design tools, we are still ensuring that those 11 outcomes of decision making, making sure that you're solving the problem at design level, are still followed through, and that the reviewers are asking you questions that are relevant to the 3D world and the 4D and 5D world, because your responsibility when you sit behind a computer doesn't really fall away, even though you're monitoring the delivery of your design from 6,000 miles away, because you do have an imaging camera doing the supervision. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Bridget. Maybe just to follow up with the slight matter, when we look at the TERs, for example, how are they going to be adapted to cover that aspect, to feature the technology? Because at the moment, if we look at the 11 outcomes, there's no specific focus on the technology.
Thank you very much. So the same thing we did when we had to incorporate academia, we had to have a workshop with academics who came in and said that the TERs don't really recognize a lot of their teaching and research work as engineering work. We had to have a session together and encourage that. So we are at the phase where, number one, we first start off with research to understand what is the appetite. We get the working groups, we get the industry together. Then once we have the working groups and that is accepted through council, the decision is then made whether to incorporate it as part of the existing TERs or to have a very specific track for these individuals, particularly the ones who never really want to go out to field, but they want to be able to develop the tools that can assist people in the field. So we are still doing the research work in being able to determine either of the two, but the ones who are doing civil with technology or electrical with technology, we are currently just merging the technician or the technologist who knows how to use BIM as part of the reviewers. That's what we're doing for now, so they can still register for now. The ones who fully want to sit behind a desk, we are still at the research phase, and we'll go through our processes to be able to create very specific TRs for them, if that is the requirement. But we require everybody to have had some sort of field experience in delivering their prototype.
Thanks, Dr. Bridget. Okay, Donovan, the next one is to you. Technology adoption in the built environment is often hindered not by cost, but by culture. How can we shift entrenched mindsets that, that equate digitalization with complexity or job displacements? What leadership behaviors and incentives are needed to normalize digital collaboration as a professional value rather than an IT experiment? So, I think what I would just like you to expand on is, that cultural challenge in terms of, digital transformation. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, it's a great topic, and it's one that's quite close to my heart in terms of digital transformation. And I think, we always got this view in engineering that it's quite a stoic sort of career path to choose. It's very set in its ways, and it has to be, because nobody wants to design a bridge that's going to fall over, right? Right? Okay. And then we come in as digital experts and we bring in a new technology and we dangle it in front of me and go, this is the way to go. And sometimes that just doesn't kick off right. And it's very important that when we approach these things of digital transformation, that we do the basics of really good change management. Can't stress that enough, do the absolute basics. And if you don't know how to do it, start somewhere with making sure that you bring those detractors along. There's so many theoretical models about how do you do good change management and that. The real way it really works is you get your top level management to buy in 100% and to make sure that they are the ones that are pushing for that change. When you've got a junior level staff member or person or a graduate crying out for change, unfortunately it gets ignored. That's just the reality of it. That's what happens on the ground. But as soon as that change goes in and comes down from a top-down approach, you get a lot more traction. And I think there's the change is inevitable, and it's going to happen. We've still got in our office as a stark reminder to old engineering habits. We've got an old wooden drawing board with a light box underneath. And most graduates, when they come in, ask what that is. So now we balance a smart tablet on top of it to make it look a little bit better. But the reality is change will happen. We've got people around us who go through this type of thing every day and are experts in that. They don't have to necessarily be in the engineering field to help you bring that change in. One piece of advice is really on the digital and technology side is make sure that your digital teams, your technology teams, are change practitioners. They're not just what we call the team that goes and drops the tin and the nice piece of tech and the shiny buttons and then leaves. If they are not doing a people process with that, it's going to fail. A lot and everything about the change management process is about the people approach. If we can't bring the people along, we're going to have a cultural clash in the business. You're going to have your tech specialists and you're going to have the guys that are for the change are looking at the laggards and they're going, man, You guys are just hampering our change and our progress. And the traditionalists are going to be nervous and they're going to go, well, I've always done it this way. So it's finding that very fine balance, and it's an active process. If you stop it at the point of sending out an email and saying, look at this brand new system that we're launching, you failed already. So do the hard yards, use proper change management, and bring the detractors with you. That's how you get people into this digital transformation thing.
Thanks very much, Donovan. All right, the next one is Warren. So if we look at ISO 19650, it promises structured information management through an asset's life cycle, yet most organizations in South Africa have adopted it only partially, if at all. Is this due to a lack of regulatory enforcement, limited client awareness, or the complexity of aligning it with local procurement and contractual frameworks like such as your JBCC, FIDIC, NEC, or even GCC? From your industry experience, what would it take to move from awareness to full implementation? And who should lead that shift? Is it government? Is it clients? Or practitioners themselves?
Okay, yes, thanks for that question. A lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that there's, in the industry, there's a perception of either all or nothing. So either we have to go full ISO 19650, all 5 volumes of it, which is a massive beast to implement, or absolutely nothing. We carry on doing exactly what we've done before. So in the consulting space, I think that is something that's got to be broken down and say, what are our, and we mentioned it earlier, the low-hanging fruits. What components of ISO 19650 or SANS 19650 can we start implementing so that when it eventually becomes mandated, that we're already ready with those components. We don't have to start from nothing and then work all the way to the finish line. We can say, okay, well, at least component A, B, and C of SANS 19650 we've already got in place. So, I would just say that that's something that should be encouraged, is to not look at on an industry level, to not look at SANS 19650 and say, we either have to know every little facet of it before we implement, or we revert to traditional methods. But with that being said, I think that if we take the United Kingdom as an example, where a lot of the BIM space originated, there it became mandated. It was mandated from a government level. They said, if you are doing transport projects in the United Kingdom, you have to comply, and this is what has to be done. And of course, they were compensated for it, which is a whole other day. So I think that there's several aspects that it's got to be driven on. I don't think it can only be from the top. I don't think it can only be from the consulting side, only from contractor side. I think that has to be driven from all sides. And just to add to the previous question about culture, I think in the consulting engineering environment, one of the cultures that we've got is we've got a very high amount of respect for age and experience. And we get young graduates coming in, and they really have a lot of common sense, and they really want to go with this digital delivery side of things. And then within the first year, we beat it out of them, because there's this perception that, oh, that guy with 25 years of experience wants everything, okay, he's now recently adopted PDFs instead of hard copies. But because he's so experienced, I must do what he wants, because that's how it works. And then we slowly wear away at that passion. And I think that from that bottom level and from the top level, from the client side, contractor side, it's got to be driven everywhere.
No, awesome, great, thank you. So maybe just a follow-up there. What are your thoughts maybe if we could look at something that's an alternative, like an ISO 650 Lite, which basically is a version tailored for local conditions, for more effectiveness in terms of taking our local context, because I think we're copying this from, advanced countries, or developed countries.
Yeah, I think that that's something that we definitely have to be looking at. And I think that if you look at the way that ISO 19650 is structured, it allows for that light version to be implemented. You know, once again, back to the all or nothing thing. But especially in South Africa, where there is such a drive towards developing small businesses, to place the expectation on a small business that they must develop all of these internal processes to be able to participate, it's almost impossible to achieve for everyone. So definitely a light version. It's similar to what we did on our side for local projects, even though SMEC is quite a big international company. For our local projects, we said we simply can't afford to go full ISO 19650 when our client doesn't require it. So we've implemented a light version to say, let's at least have a common data environment in place. Let's at least map out what our exchange formats are and, you know, how do we deliver information internally and externally. So it's absolutely necessary in our environment in the Global South.
Great, thank you. All right, and then to Anien, the question to you is, if we look at projects today, they often involve joint ventures where each party uses different digital tools. How are practitioners ensuring consistent information flow across these diverse systems? Are there translation layers or middleware issues or solutions that truly solve the problem? Or are teams relying on manual exports and imports that basically erode data fidelity? What would a national interoperability framework need to look like for South Africa to align across disciplines and software ecosystems?
I think that's a brilliant question. You know, on the topic of interoperability and you know, managing different softwares, different platforms between different stakeholders, I think it all starts with your process and your strategy. So a very important part of, especially when you are working on a project, is during that initiation stage, is to come together as a group and decide on the strategy. If we talk about, for instance, a common data environment, you know, your common data environment needs to allow for different file formats. That's when it's really like more powerful. I know different clients and stakeholders use different common data environments or platforms. Some use OneDrive, SharePoint, Dropbox. If you're fortunate to afford things like Autodesk Construction Cloud, then your capabilities within that tool is so much more. So I think it's very important to, you know, to start with looking at your tools and your platforms and how that allows for interoperability. What we do as an organization, for instance, in AECOM, we really advocate open BIM standards like using IFC, industry foundation classes, file formats, so that we can, so that files and information can all talk the same language when it comes from different, you know, parties. Besides IFC, another thing is also your COBE, which is a standardized data output, which especially you know, has benefits of, for your asset management downstream. So I think very important is to look at your tool, specifically your technology. How does that allow for that interoperability? How do we get everyone aligned in that platform? If you've decided on a common data environment, what is your let's say, workflows to collaborate? We like to, you know, advocate for platform agnostic workflows that allows everyone to work together despite what software they use. I know it's difficult, you know, if we use different softwares, but really to think about, okay, what is our workflows going to be? What is our strategy? How are we going to connect the dots? Also, just on, you know, not just on interoperability, it's also, or just besides the technology itself, it also comes down to the people. We need to train and upskill our people to be able to work, you know, in between different formats or platforms, to look at best practices for a specific platform or a software or a file format, so that our teams are equipped to be able to work in that environment. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
No, thanks very much, Anien. All right, just a follow-up, still on you. Have you seen contractual clauses that clearly allocate risk for data translation errors in contracts?
Say again,
just from your experience, have you seen contractual clauses that clearly allocate risks for data translation errors?
Yes, that's actually very important. And we've experienced it on a number of projects. If there's not a robust risk mitigation strategy in place, it will come back to you at some point. So whether it's in your RFP, if you do a bid proposal, or stating it very clearly in something like your BEP, your BIM execution plan, which is also a contractual document, it's very important to have that risk factor and to also outline that so that everyone is aware of it, and to also have a certain extent of risk mitigation strategies that is properly defined.
Thanks very much, Anien. All right, I'm going to go back to Dr. Bridget. All right, now we're talking about intellectual property. This should be very interesting. So as a custodian of professional standards, how is ECSA approaching the legal vacuum around intellectual property and data ownership in multi-stakeholder digital projects? When a professional engineer contributes to a shared BIM model under an EPC or EPCM contract, does the IP reside with the professional, the client, or digital platform provider? Should ECSA develop a policy position or advisory framework on data and model ownership, considering South Africa's move towards open data and smart infrastructure?
The views I am about to express. So that opening aside, I do have a view, and that view comes from the fact that I'm from academia.
Yeah.
And I come from, and I love academia because there is a very specific way in which the engineering practitioners are taught. Engineering practitioners are taught to innovate. And all of you, as you hold your phones, think of Alexander Graham Bell, and if he had put IP on that phone. So we are by nature creators, inventors, and innovators. But because somehow the design that was done on pen and paper doesn't need IP, right? Because design standards and codes were based on individuals coming up with a very specific design, as they tweaked it, as they customized it, as they localized it. When we get to design in 3D, all of a sudden, intellectual property is now important. And I do think it has an origin, and we can blame the Mark Zuckerbergs for that. Because they made a lot of money from a business or a section of technology that didn't exist. And now, as we design, I said I worked for AECOM for about maybe 9, 10 years, and there was a point where a client would ask you for a problem, and the BIM team comes up with a solution for the client. So the organization does not have sewers, but the client has millions of kilometers of sewers that they need to check, inspect, without having to send individuals down, because you now have come up with an innovation that helps the client. And the true question is, who do you want to solve that problem? Because coming from academia and understanding that what we do is we innovate, there is an aspect that has to happen for the developer of it. But the developer of it, you have a responsibility of monetizing it, but not to the detriment of innovation and improvement. So there needs to be a balance. So you have a discussion with that client, but that is not going to be the only water and sewage client you have in the world. So you actually have the ability to scale your solution that you've created to a global scale. And that can be your responsibility because you came fast. Look at how Tesla, for example, monetized the electric vehicle industry, and Nissan didn't do it with the Leaf, even though Nissan had come up with the Leaf a lot earlier than Tesla came up with their first model. So my view is intellectual property within the engineering space should not even be a word that exists, because we are solely in this profession to solve problems using inventions. So whether the invention is a prototype that you put in place like a VIP latrine, or it is an innovation that you've done out of technology, I do think there needs to be a balance. And I think that we are inhibiting a lot of young people who come up with ideas but want to monetize those ideas. At my PhD, I developed a network model for airlines that I see airlines are using because I was able to put the algorithm online. They were able to use it because in academia, that information was free. So when I'm looking at airlines using that exact network model, whether they're using the 4-hub or the 5-hub or the central hub, I know they are doing the work, but I got a PhD in return. And I think we need, that's why I say the views for me come from a balance of academia and also being able to progress us forward, because we need to be able to do it. And we've seen the detriment in the pharmaceutical industry of hoarding IP and making it so expensive it comes at the extent of impact. So I'm not the type who purports the engineering of I built, you know, this wide span or this steel bridge or this. I would say I connected cities. I impacted and created access for people, because engineering is for impact and problem solving rather than monetizing. And that is why I started with my disclaimer that I never got to finish. Yeah. But that is the view that I hold, that we need to find a balance. And I've seen many young graduates stuck because they're waiting for their money. The interesting real life story that we have is that the industrial engineering student at WITS who came up with the Checkers 60 app, she came up with it in her third year. It was a project. You tell me that she does not have benefit from it. She does, because when she left, she worked with Floor for some time, but because they had seen the capability of her model and they were able to approach her, Checkers was able to approach her at that level, she was able to scale up. She now runs an organization of her own, helping other people develop models that assist their businesses. That is the true monetization that will add value. As you all sit and order for your things the next time, think about what if she had kept it because she was waiting for IP and intellectual property and trade law to be able to assist her to propel it forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Dr. Bridget. Yeah. Look, we find ourselves in the context where we have to acknowledge the word IP. Yeah? So I'll take it back there just now. In that context, should ECSA maybe your perspective again, Dr. Bridget, should ECSA issue guidance, distinguishing between intellectual property, data custodianship, and moral rights in digital outputs?
I think for me it's the moral side. I think it is the moral side that is important. But in terms of data ownership, I will tell you though, first of all, ECSA is a regulator. So whatever we say does not even lend itself as an opinion. You're creating a position in the sector. So we have to be very careful what we pronounce on, and that's why I gave the disclaimer that I did in the beginning. So I do think in terms of the commercial interests of people who come up with innovative designs, I do think we can come up with the best practice. But the best people who would be able to do it, in my view, are voluntary associations, because they can be able to create the position of the people who develop and the people who use. What we can do is pronounce on the ethics of it or the moral side of it, because our interest is in making sure that whoever came up with it, that no code of conduct was breached, and that the code of practice in the person being able to deliver their work cannot be found wanting if they pursue the financial aspect, because it is their they're autonomous as an individual to be able to make the decision. It does not then mean they need to prescribe to a certain way. So on the ethical part of it, yes, I think it's an important aspect that we can be able to deal with. But I think data is a little bit more complicated. Data is the new currency. But also on the prototypes itself and the technology and the use of that technology in a continued way between a consultant and a client, I do think it's a contractual matter that needs to be addressed at a contractual level and not prescribed at a regulatory level.
Thanks, Dr. Bridget. Okay, Donovan. Many professionals are trained to operate software, but not to understand systems-level implications of digital integration. How can we move from tool proficiency to conceptual mastery, where professionals understand data flow, process integration, and governance principles behind common data environments and digital twins?
Why did I get the bigger topic? Okay. Just before I answer that, I just want to say I think you've changed my mind a little bit about IP, because aren't we conditioned to create IP for profit? Anyway, just leave it there. I don't have a cool disclaimer. I think, when you're talking about that move from just using the tool to actually understanding the data flow and understanding the benefits and how it can actually change what you're doing, there's a crucial component in there. And funny enough, it's not the technology. The technology is that enabling component of everything that we do, but it's that human factor. In our organization, we promote this concept of a digital champion. And we take people who are proficient in not only in the tool, but understanding in how they can make the connections across projects, across disciplines, and into clients. And we make sure that these champs are embedded into our different discipline teams, especially, and let me just making sure there's no one here from our organization before I say this. That is being recorded. Especially maybe you find a slightly weaker discipline on a digital tool. There's no weak disciplines in terms of the engineering. It's amazing what engineers do. I myself am not an engineer. I'm a digital specialist, and when we take the digital component of what is meant to be done in that workflow and the entire environment that they're working in, and we link it into the engineering, the domain expert, that's when the magic happens. I'm not saying that the engineer cannot just do it by themselves, of course, and that's where we want to get to, and that's the place you want to get to. But don't we want the engineers to concentrate on the engineering and use the digital tools to help and aid? So if we're going to do that, then we've got to step up as a digital platform owners, as digital implementers, as digital evangelists and all that. We've got to step that up to make sure that we are coming fully alongside the engineering community in how these platforms are implemented. Otherwise, someone's going to be left behind. We're going to be left with a massive bill of an expensive system and absolutely no return on investment, and then the trust is eroded. So, yeah, the two are absolutely connected, and they are connected by the person. They're not necessarily connected by the technology.
Thanks very much, Donovan. Warren, if one looks at IFC and COBIE, if one looks at these two aspects, these were meant to basically liberate data from proprietary systems, yet their adoption in South Africa has been patchy at best. What are the practical challenges you face when trying to exchange or archive data using these open formats? Are the file conversions unreliable, or do they strip out intelligence that makes the data less useful? How can local standard bodies and councils support practitioners in adopting open standards as a default rather than an afterthought?
Okay, thank you for that one. Yeah. So, yes, I think that there's a number of issues at play. I myself am from the transport sector of civil engineering, and everything IFC was built around buildings. It was built around structures where you've got very defined components, and it's very easy to segment components of a project or of an asset and then to simply attach parameters to it. But then when you start dealing with something like transport infrastructure, where you've got a 60-kilometer long subbase layer and it was constructed in separate little sections, then the question becomes, how do you use IFC for something like that? You know, where that's just an example. You know, because you'll speak to a contractor and say, okay, well, there's an IFC file. You have to, for the as-built records, you've got to add information to it, you know, your test results and such. But then they say, oh, but I didn't build it like that. You know, I built it in wider sections, or I didn't start and stop exactly where you said. So those type of hurdles are something that is still being addressed in the development of IFC. So, you know, we're sitting on IFC 4x3 at the moment, and I think that IFC is only going to be easy to adopt as the community contributes to it and as it develops and addresses all of these shortcomings. And then I think the other aspect of it is that if you look at the scale of our projects, there's this feeling that something like IFC is unnecessary amongst teams because they say, oh, okay, but we can just exchange things in DWG, it's in the folder on the server, here's a link. And then they say, but why the additional step? And I think that what we're sitting with is that there's this challenge of that, there's a way of thinking that at the end of our project, that's it, we're done. You know, there isn't a thinking of longevity of the information that we create, that it doesn't end once our contract with the client ends. It is something that has got to go into the full project life cycle when we operate it, when we upgrade it, when we decommission it. So I think that that understanding has to be relevant across all parts of the project life cycle. So I think that with regards to losing some information, it's particularly a big question in the transport sector as well. So I think that if you try to export now to IFC on a transport project, you will lose information. And for some people, they'll say it's very important information. Some people say it doesn't really matter. But that perception that data's lost deters people from attempting it. Instead of saying, okay, but is there a way that we can supplement that information?
Okay, thanks very much, Warren. Maybe just a follow-up. Are local software vendors providing proper support for open standards export-import functionality?
So I unfortunately don't work with local software vendors. We piggyback on the Americans, you know, for the software that they develop. But even locally, the support is not what it could be. And I think that a lot of that is up to each individual company to now try to, you know, figure out how the software works. And, you know, we know that training is expensive, training takes time, and sometimes even though there is support, we don't take full advantage of it. But yes, I think that the support is on different levels. It's not really what it should be, in my opinion. We'll see if I get nasty emails after saying that.
Okay. Just last follow-up from my side. When used, do these standards actually improve facility management, handover, and asset data reliability?
Well, I think that that's the intent. I think that, you know, in South Africa, we're still in the really early stages. I'm now specifically focusing on South African projects. We're in the early phases that most of the infrastructure that's out there was not built using these open data formats. So we don't have a lot of good test cases yet. But I think that if we look at on the international side and the benefits that have come out of that on the international side, you've got owners of infrastructure who are actively accessing that information on a daily basis. And I think that we can't not look outside our bubble. We have to see what those benefits are. And definitely I've seen many examples of it going all the way down to decommissioning of infrastructure.
Thanks very much, Warren. Okay. Anien, despite the promise of life cycle information management, few organizations achieve continuous data flow from design to operations. How can South Africa move towards genuine information continuity, where projects data become operational data seamlessly?
So I think the whole discussion around life cycle information, it also comes down to a mindset change. So a lot of us in industry, and especially in South Africa, working on projects, we work very, let's say, very siloed in our discipline. We focus on our, let's say, design deliverables. So as an architect, you focus on building your 3D model, getting your design done, getting it on site, managing it on site, and there we go. Getting your occupancy and so forth. For engineers, almost the same thing. But I don't think we are all there yet in terms of thinking, okay, what is the end use of that information and how is it going to be used past our deliverable? How is the client going to use it? How is the next stakeholder going to use it for operations, for facility management? So I think it's having that roadmap from beginning to end. How is that information going to travel? From the moment it's created, how are we going to manage it? How are we going to maintain it? And then how are we going to hand it over so that it's usable for the next user? And that it can continue that life cycle. A big part of that is, so a lot of us focus on the 3D, let's say, the 3D information production. Some of us, yes, we've started looking at the non-graphical information. In other words, what information is going into your, let's use a 3D model as an example. But part of that is also thinking about your metadata. How is that specifically developed? What is the client's requirements? What does their systems look like? I'm going to use an example of, especially in asset management, you look at your CMMS system. If you work with a new client or an organization, what specific system do they use to manage their facilities, to do maintenance, all of that? And then how do we, as the creators of that information, make sure at the end of the day that we produce it in such a way that they can use it in their systems? And how do we map that out, and what is our process? And what is our standards around that? So I think that is a very big portion of that whole information lifecycle process. It's not just focusing on what we call the project information model, if you look at ISO, but also the asset information model, and how can it return back into its life cycle of becoming a project information model again, if we need to start the design process again. Yeah.
Thank you. Just two follow-ups. First one is, in your opinion, should data continuity KPIs be embedded in consultants and contractor performance matrix?
I think definitely. However, it will vary per client or the end user, the stakeholders, but I think that's a very crucial part to be embedded in the contractual agreements, in the initial, if you get approached to do an RFP or a bid proposal, the party who needs to produce that needs to be clear on that and needs to be made aware of that. So I think it's very important to embed that into the requirements so that you can plan for it, but you can also price for it. So because on a project, we see a lot, sometimes there's no budget for that, or we run out of budget because we don't have a good comprehension of what it actually entails to do that part of the whole project. So very important, yes. Okay,
great, thank you. So, and are clients equipped technically or contractually to own and maintain digital assets after project completion?
A loaded question. I think it depends on your client. Some clients, yes, but I think in our South African landscape, we are still getting there. I don't think it's, they, are equipped for it yet. But again, it depends on the organization. I think it comes back to that mindset again, and also educating industry and our clients about it. Sometimes if a client doesn't have the necessary knowledge about it, we as the consultants should also guide them.
Thank you very much. Maybe at this point, through you, MC, can I take a few questions from the floor? Okay, let's take 3 questions from the floor from anyone. Okay, I see a hand there at the back, another hand, and another hand. Okay, so please leave your hand raised, please. Yeah.
Okay, the name is Joe Amadi Echendu, Emeritus Professor at the University of Pretoria. It's so nice to see many of you. And it's dangerous for me to take this microphone and start first, because I have a lot of things to say, but let me not do all that. All the issues you're dealing with is what we call operational readiness. How do you make sure all of this ensures that you're operationally ready for the asset? Because you're creating the asset. And I'm seeing that we're forgetting that the real subject matter is about digital engineering. And that we should actually start teaching digital engineering across the board. And this is where we'll be able to handle some of this. And so that for UJ, for all the universities, I think it's time to introduce this module called digital engineering so that we can start getting these young people to start looking across the board and making sure that whatever they're building is operationally ready. The second part of the point that I want to add is, I don't want to ask you guys questions because it's not necessary. Let's go back and ask ourselves, why do we have to always adopt these models that don't serve us at all? I like the 19650, but I'm asking myself, why is it that the Chinese don't care about it and they're building things in 3 days?
Okay, there's another hand. Please keep your hand raised for questions. Okay.
Good day. My name is Patti Sofotoi. I'm from Rio Tinto. I'm heading the capital projects. My question is to Dr. Bridget. You touch on a very important aspect of constructability reviews. And I'm really interested, you've made mention of the tools that needs to be used for constructability reviews. I've got a question because currently I'm at lockerheads with one of the consultants. You often find that the consultants, they don't really support to do constructability reviews because it affects their fees. How do we manage this? Thank you.
Dr. Bridget, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. So I can speak because I'm not a consultant anymore. But I also think it is something that I was thinking about as everybody was talking. On the back side of what we do is improper conduct. The unintended consequence of the use of technology and BIM is that a structural engineer now thinks they can be a construction manager. And my people from SSCP CMP are really happy about that. But the other more scary part is because if the model can do 5D and 6D, then they can become a quantity surveyor. And then they can do LiDAR surveys. And that is the improper conduct side, the unethical side that we need to be really careful about. Just because you have a tool that does it, it does not then mean you are providing a one-stop shop specialization in the delivery of a matter. So my view, Rio Tinto, I'm going to assume you're a client. There should be no delivery design because constructability reviews are very easy, right? Value engineering is simple to do because once you do the design, it is part of the options analysis anyway, when you've gotten the 3 digital designs that have been delivered to you. So check 2 things, value engineering, constructability review, but please make sure that your construction management team is there with you, and make sure that the team, the consulting team that brings you the work also has a registered individual. Our facilitator right now is both a PRNG, but he's also registered with SACP CMP. So they are people like that, and they can be able to wear the dual hat role so that they can be able to advise you on both. Then you get them to commit on both. And then you make sure that your phasing and your delivery stage of the project is in line with the constructability plan that you had when you were choosing the design option. That would be my view. But in your situation, chances are the horse has bolted because you're now at loggerheads with the design team. I think it's about putting your heads together, sitting down around a table, and do that phasing right now, as is and where you are, and then let everybody take their hit. But if it isn't something that you required of them to do, they probably didn't do it. But constructability reviews are very easy to do in 3D design and the BIM design environment, because it is part of the value engineering and the QA/QC that should be delivered to you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Bridget. Hand it back there. Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Johannes Mangani. I am a mechanical engineering graduate from here at UJ. So my question is based around change, like introducing change within the industry, or maybe you can say innovation. So, my apologies, I'm not sure if it's Dr. or Mr. Donovan said that. So he said like the change must be from the top for that change to be considered, but it is difficult for change to be from the bottom, meaning from someone who is down there in terms of experience. So my question is, could it be that maybe there is a trust issue in terms of the education that we are getting as students before, as we graduate? Could it be that there is something that needs to be done for them to trust that the graduate can bring the trustworthy innovation? And also, in terms of, for instance, we can talk about experience. There is obviously someone who has been there knows a lot about experience. And also there is, you can know something from a theoretical level, but you'll find that when you practice, when you put that in practice, it becomes a different story, or maybe you need to consider other things that can only be observed when that thing is working practically. So basically, I just want to understand if could there be something done to like improve or help graduates or those who are at the bottom to be trusted, especially if we are considering people who want to invent, for instance. Yeah.
Yeah. You are 100% correct, absolutely. And I think we've got to be careful in how we label change. It's different in different organizations. A larger organization can suffer from some seriously slow change depending on how advanced they are and how they do things, while maybe smaller organizations are a lot more agile. But the adverse can also happen. But what you're saying there about the graduate coming in with the excitement and the willingness to try and test and innovate should never be dampened by the decades of experience of, well, you're just going to get a house with a dog one day and then it all grows off into the sunset. You've got to come with the enthusiasm and you have to challenge the status quo. If you don't, how else will the industry grow? It's quite a simple thing. And I think that on the innovation side, what we really need to be careful with, and I'm surprised no one's asked the question yet, the graduates that are coming in are using tools that are now very commonplace. We're dealing with changes on the field of AI that are exponential. We are looking at things that and saying, you know, are we a fast follower of that, or do we jump right in and just go ahead and thrash around and see what we can do? Sam Altman was you mentioned that, you know, in the next few years, we're probably going to see a one-person, $1 billion business because of the way AI is advancing. Now, when you get a graduate come in who's been exposed to this, who's experimenting freely, and then they get squashed because of maybe an idea or something around the lines of that's not how we've ever done it, I don't think it's helpful. So we've got to create space for that to happen. One of the handles and one of the things that we do is we pair a graduate with a very let's call it mature and experienced engineer. We pair them together. It's great fun to watch. And the transfer of knowledge in that is phenomenal. I mean, as much as the graduate learns, let's call them the old school engineer, with all respect, learns as well at the same time. It's lovely to watch, you know, someone said, you know, that they've just got onto the PDF stage. You know, when they come out of these meetings and these interactions and that they're moving into a different stage now, and they're like, yeah, I know what level 3 BIM is. You can't tell me. It's awesome to see. And I think that we can't stop that sort of thing happening. As soon as we stop it and we draw a line and we say, look, we're not going to encourage innovation, who are we kidding? We're going to fall behind in that. So just as a word of encouragement in that, don't be the person that stops it. Rather be the person that gives it a bit of a shove and a push in the right direction.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So I think I've taken hands from this side. Just one more. There will be an opportunity, colleagues, to maybe interact with the panel, you know, outside of this session. Can I just maybe take a hand? I think I've taken a lot of hands from this side. Can I take a hand from this side? Just one more hand, and then I will just request that then, you know, we interact outside of this, you know, session as well, because I see there's a lot of interest. So I'm hoping the panel is going to be remaining.
Yeah, thank you very much, facilitator. My question is going to Dr. Bridget. I can hear from even the conversation that we're having with your panelists. But one of the things, my name is Bafana Dube. I'm the Deputy President of the Black Business Council in the built environment. I see now we are talking about the digitalization of the built environment. But when you look at, you're talking about your regulatory role that you need to play. And then there will be yourself, there will be CIDB in the built environment. You're playing a very critical role. But my challenge is that even though we talk about the digitalization of the built environment sector, but South Africa, when you look at it, we are part of the system. Yourself as a regulatory framework within government, you are part of the system. CIDB is a part of the system. And then the system of government then dictate to you how you should think. That's another challenge that we're sitting on. I'm saying when you talk digitalization, at the same time, we still hamstrung by challenges that we haven't moved on as a country. Before we even talk about digitalization. For instance, we've got a challenge now in the industry around registration of professionals. You see, and then now there's an aspect of the digitalization of the industry. How then you gonna able to deal with that gap? Because of you still need to close that gap. That's one part. And then the second part is that the universities and the industry itself, they are way apart. We are way apart. We can have this discussion, moderator, but for me, when you look at it, the universities are way apart, the industry is way apart. The fact is that that's why we still have a problem with how we need to integrate NSFAS and then into the industry itself and run a model, because sometimes in life, you need to have a bigger vision where you want to go and then work backwards in terms of saying, then how are we going to be able to achieve that vision? We still lack leadership, both sides, on your regulatory framework, on your side, even on CIDB. And this is what we are encouraging as BBCPE, being the industry, representing the professionals and representing the contractors. I'm saying, if we haven't closed your issue of the registration, you've got 30,000 people who are standing on candidacy. that needs to be registered in this country, and you're still going to need more. But how do you deal with that before even we speak about digitalization, so that you can able to marry the two at the end of the day? But if you're still sitting at another, we've got challenges on the registration side, then you talk digitalization, then how do you close the gap in between? That's what I want to understand from your perspective.
Dr. Bridget, I'm sure.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So that's why when I began, I started with where universities are. You'll be surprised. Universities are teaching digital tools. They are. The problem happens when they get out into the market and then they are told they don't have to register to practice. Some of the realities we face with our sector is that because one direct job creates 8 indirect jobs, it is not a sector like accountants or lawyers or auditors. A retired teacher can become a contractor. And that's a reality we have to understand, and it's a global one. We belong to the International Engineering Alliance, and I think of all the countries that are members, it is only Malaysia that requires that anyone who studied engineering and is practicing engineering needs to register. Only Malaysia. So there is a reality. The construction business in New York, we all know, does not have engineering professionals, the origin of the construction industry, even in a developed entity like the US. So I think there are certain realities that we have to understand because it's big ticket money, but it is also political decision making. Outside of education and health and security, it is the biggest single pot of money that a government has to spend on. And it cannot afford to spend it because universities, by nature, require the engineering fraternity to come through to the market. But the whole point is there is space for the engineer, there is space for the technologist, there is space for the technician, but there is space for the bricklayer. So I do think some of the realities we face are as follows, and I speak best in numbers. Currently, 1 in 5, and this is work that we did in maybe 2022, 1 in 5 practicing professionals are registered. And we are looking to be able to improve that. But currently, who gives them work when they are not registered? Right? So we are giving them work. We are giving them work to build our homes. We are giving them work because they won the tender and they were able to negotiate things that come outside of that tender. And we are requiring them to have only one registered person responsible for design. As for the contractors, it's even worse. It is only the 7 and 8 levels at CIDB that require registration, but at director level. So you tell me when the director of contracting company A is going to be on site when the work is being done. So, and all of these things are legislated, and how long does it take for legislation to change? So there are certain things that are endemic to where we are today, but there are things that can be done. I know many clients are making the effort in asking for project managers, design managers, to make sure that they're available, they are put in the tender, and that they win. But we have professionals who front as well. And it's not common to us also, the pharmaceutical industry has it. We have professionals who are selling their signatures. And I think those things are quite important. In the candidacy stage, we are trying to do a lot to improve. But I do think the throughput would be improved if we also had improved systems as an organization. But again, change management is an issue. We are looking at exams as a process because there are many people who are scared, genuinely scared, and have been in the pipeline as candidates for 10 years. Surely you cannot be a candidate for 10 years. You're already paying the amount of money that a professional pays. And chances are you have the experience. But you're now too embarrassed to stand in front of your student so that your student is going to be your reviewer. So we do have a lot of those people, and a lot of them come from public sector because they had an environment where their boss told them they didn't really need to register. So we are trying to change the narrative. We are trying to be more active. We are going digital, and we are selling what professional registration means. But I do think there are some realities that we are always going to grapple with as a sector to make sure that the work is done. Universities are stepping up. They are doing the job. Actually, on my side, I feel bad for students because they have to learn the basics, the principles. They have to learn how to do it on pen and paper, and then they have to learn how to do it digitally. So the workload is a lot for students right now, and they are learning. And many employers have the bridging courses, the training courses. There are many service providers that have also coming on board to be able to train. All those things cost money. So if there is an area where NAFSAS needs to play a role, for me, it is in the bridging of how do we make sure that these individuals who have finished are ready for employment. Because BEAM as an additional skill for any students that are coming through the ranks will make them a lot more marketable, both locally and internationally, and they wouldn't have to even get on a plane to fly. But they would be involved in a project in Australia because they can, and because they know BEAM. And that would make our discipline a lot more stable, whether there is money for infrastructure projects or where there is no money. It's a loaded question. I've given you a loaded response. But like all things, we need a lot of stakeholders to come together. But we will continue to all work for the same thing because we are trying to push the fraternity and the sector forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, panel. Yeah. So, as we conclude, may I just extend a profound gratitude to our distinguished panelists for their sharp reflections, strategic foresight, and the depth of practical experience they've shared across today's sub-themes. Their perspectives have not only dissected the technical and institutional challenges confronting South Africa's digital transformation, but have also illuminated pathways towards a more intelligent, equitable, interconnected built environment. What has emerged is a collective recognition that digital transformation is not merely a technological shift. It is a reimagining of how we design, build, operate, and sustain the infrastructure that underpins our society. May the insights shared today continue to inspire action, collaboration, and courage to build a digital ecosystem that truly reflects innovation, resilience, and ambition of South Africa's built environment. Thank you, panel members. May we give them a round of applause, please.